Welcome to week 11, where we will be covering theories of personality. For this chapter, we're basically covering all of the key main theories behind why we do the things we do and who we are and where that comes from. Now, keep in mind that these are theories, so none of them are proven to be more correct than the other or more accurate. They're just different ways of viewing the person and trying to explain what makes us unique in terms of our personality. So you'll begin the chapter by taking a look just in general at personality. What are the various perspectives of it? And then that's where it starts to get into the breakdown of each different individual's perspective. So it starts off with Freud and his view of personality from a psychodynamic perspective. Now we're going to visit Freud again when we get to the chapter on mental illness, abnormal psych. But he is important here because he had a lot to say about how we develop our unique traits and attributes and quirks. In particular, a lot of Freud's perspective comes from underlying anxieties that we hold, and this kind of shapes us and molds us into who we are. So a good deal of time is spent in the beginning of the chapter talking about Freud's perspective. He talks about the id, the ego, and the superego. He talks about the psychosexual stages of development that he believes everyone moves through, and successful navigation through those stages will result in a fairly well-adjusted individual. However, if we get hung up in any of those stages, that's where underlying anxieties, and he would argue psychopathology, arises, and we have troubles later. So his view is covered first, and then it kind of moves into some of the newer Freudian theory, Carl Jung, Adler, Horney, and Erikson, who modify some of Freud's theory. They agreed with some of what he said and didn't agree with other aspects of the theory. So we call these kind of the neo-Freudians because they kind of have a spin off of Freud's original theories, and some people refer to them as the more modern psychoanalytic theorists. Okay, so it's important to understand why did they differ from Freud when it comes to his theory on personality. What was the same and what was different? Then we move from that entire area into behaviorism and social cognitive theories. How does a behaviorist explain, and a great example of a behaviorist would be Albert Bandura, right? He was the one we looked at when we looked at observational learning. Or Carl Rogers is humanist, but looking at some of the early learning theorists in that learning chapter that we covered. So Skinner, and what would he say about kind of the mechanisms of behavior and how some of that is shaped into what becomes our personality. Social cognitive theorists explain personality coming or stemming more from our social settings and how we view and think about our social settings. So the two kind of go hand in hand, but there are some unique differences in there. So that kind of the middle part of the chapter is spent on those. And then moves into the humanistic view, which is largely Carl Rogers, a little bit of Abraham Maslow in there, but looks at, a kind of a more positive spin, whereas Freud was a little dark, a little negative. Humans are basically bad, he said, and we kind of are always fighting that. Into the humanism approach to, how do we achieve our most optimal self and self-actualization? How do we reach that, and how do we become what he called sort of self-actualize? We realize who we want to be, and who we are is close in line with who we want to be. That the two concepts kind of relate to one another. So those are all very historical, theoretical perspectives. And then we start taking a shift and we look at trait perspective, which is much more mechanistic. And this is kind of like the current view on personality. How do traits categorize a person? So if I am caring or giving or conscientious or I'm outgoing, these are aspects about me that make me who I am, and we can look at those traits and start to see patterns in behavior. And so kind of what this view aims to do is be able to know, are there certain patterns of behavior, like does one trait go with another trait in particular? And if I know that, I might know how I would expect a person to behave or respond to certain life events or situations. Lastly, the chapter covers how do we measure personality. So now that we kind of have an understanding and a historical view on how we've understood personality, how do we then measure it? Like if I want to know, what is my personality? Can I put a label on it? Are there ways to do that? So it looks at interviews, different projective tests, which are largely from psychodynamic theory, different behavioral assessments like cataloging and scales that look at a person's behavior, as well as personality inventories. And some of you may be familiar with some of these personality inventories, like the MMPI. Is a really popular one that's used in a lot of industry when applying for jobs, especially law enforcement. If you're trying to adopt a child, you might be given a personality inventory. The goal is to see, what is this person like? Based on how they answer these questions, gives me kind of an accurate snapshot of what that person is like. And then different online personality tests as well. And there's a multitude that we can look at and do. There's some fun ones online. If you look at 16personalities.com, and I'm thinking about putting that actually in for this week. I haven't yet, but if I do, I'll do it by this weekend, and more to come on that. But there's some fun ones you can take that are free online and can give you a pretty good guesstimate on in basis of your traits of how you might be and how you might act. So basically that is the chapter. Your notes that go along with it are here, and you're going to be watching all the videos in my Psych Lab this week that are in episode 13, which is personality, and you will get a little bit of some of this here in those videos. There's a couple different theorists whose theories are explained in those videos, as well as measurement of personality are in there. For the discussion this week, you're looking at the Hawk number 27 reading, which deals with how does personality correlate to our health. So are there certain things about us that might make us more or less healthy? In particular, the reading looks at type A personality. What is type A personality? What kind of traits make up a type A person? And how are they linked to heart disease? Really compelling evidence there. And then I'm asking you to kind of think of someone you know with type A personality, either someone you know personally, or if there is no one you know who is a type A, maybe there's a TV personality or someone you know from a show that you watch that you could say, yeah, they're totally type A. Give me some examples. What about them tells you that they're type A? How do you know that? And then if you are a type A person, how would you go about changing those attributes about you, or can you even, to improve your health? And you're going to be looking to the readings for some suggestions there on how to do that. Particularly, Cicerelli and White mention a couple, and then the Hawk book also mentions a couple. So take a look at those there. And then we have your quiz and the exam this week. And the exam is covering chapters 10 and 11. And that pretty much wraps up the week. Like I said, I may include a personality measure for fun that I can have you go online and take. I might decide to integrate that into the discussion question this week. I just haven't quite decided yet. It really depends on the site. I'm going to see what's available for free that we could do or access. So be on the lookout for that. If I put it in, it would be it would go along with the discussion. So it would be something like you would click on a link, you would take the test, and then you would tell me a little bit about how you scored. But that wraps up the week. If you have any questions, please let me know. Thanks.